episode of Mohamed Talks with millionaires, billionaires, quadrillionaires, entrepreneurs, millionaires, public speakers, motivational speakers, and more. Today I have my brother from another mother and the owner of the company that is distributing my book, Paolo Ben Salmi, my brother from another mother. How are you today? And yeah, introduce yourself to the audience.
Definitely. So I'm doing great. Thank you, Mohammed. Just to say thank you so much for having me. So to all the listeners, my name is Paolo Ben Salmi. I'm 13 years old. I'm an author of around 11 books, soon to be 12. And I'm also the owner of the publishing house called Adventures Publishing, which Mohammed correctly said, which is the publisher of his book, Life Essentials. And yeah, I'm just really, really passionate about helping young people understand who they are before they go out into the world. And I believe that starts with internal and external adventures, because if you don't know who you are, there's no point going into the world because you're just going to accept anything.
Of course, 100%. Today's topic is about learning. Learning about how our information flows into our brain and how we gain information and how it comes here and goes there, etc. So what do you think about learning?
I think, first of all, it's a great question. But I also like to say it's a very, very wide, broad range topic. Because you learn, there's learning in everything. You could be doing something bad and learn from it. You could be doing something positive and learn from it. So, but when you talk about a learning that is going to either adapt and change the way you think, feel, and behave in a positive way, then if I can comment on that, then I would say that it's just an amazing thing that you can just learn from so many things. And I can almost change that a bit and say you can learn from other people as well. You can almost learn from anyone. You can learn from mistakes. You can learn from experiences. You can learn from so many things. So definitely, learning is such a broad range topic. And even from this podcast, you can learn something. But really, within learning, the ultimate key factor within that learning and you having that positive learning and being able to capture information starts with you and what your intention is to get out of a certain teaching. If you listen to someone, for instance, this podcast, or a teacher, a religious teacher, or a maths teacher who's trying to, influence your knowledge and what you know as a person. If you go into that lesson being a stubborn, ignorant person and sitting back in chair and acting like a know-it-all within that teaching, you're not going to learn anything, because the art of learning is being able to accept that you don't know everything. And that's a really key point. And it's the most fundamental point within learning, which is accepting that you don't know everything. And it's important to understand that the people who are teaching you take time out of their day, because they could have been doing anything else. They could have been fishing in their, in the pond, or running around playing with their kids in the backyard, or doing so many other things, but they chose to come and teach you something. So that says a lot, and it means a lot, and it should do. And so I think learning is a very wide range topic.
Of course. So yeah, an overview of learning was basically what we spoke about there. But so what do you think? Do you think like learning as in the gain of knowledge? That's what I mean by learning. Because when you're learning,
Definitely,
you're gaining knowledge. But there's a difference between learning and then actually gaining knowledge. Because the learning we have in our schools is a lot more different than actually trying to gain knowledge. The learning we have in our
definitely.
schools is systemized, limited for a specific period amount of time that you need for a period amount of time. But the gain of knowledge, the knowledge that you gain in your everyday life situations, you're going to need that for life. So what do you think about that?
I think it's very key what you just shared, because there's a difference between hearing to something and listening to something as well. And I can elaborate on that by saying that let's say you hear this podcast, right? Now it might come in one ear and go out the other, but if you're actually listening and you're paying attention, they're both L's, listening and learning. So if you're actually listening to learn and actually listening to adapt your behaviors or to actually gain knowledge, that's where you're going to find the most improvement within your life. So I think it's very important to address the two, because people might get it mixed up, because you can be learning, but people can be teaching you something, you can be hearing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're learning from them. So definitely that's a great question.
100%. Yeah. So learning is a part of our lives. We're going to learn a lot of things and we're going to have to apply them. But here's a quote that I really love. It's motivation, understanding, comprehension, education, all without application is nothing. Because if you learn and you can't apply anything of what you've learned is basically useless. What do you think about that?
I think it's an amazing quote, and I think it just sums up everything of what we're talking about in this podcast around learning. Because it is important to understand that if you are trying to adapt change or create change or kind of manipulate your behaviors in a positive way, and you're trying to make more positivity in your life through learning, you have to adapt and apply the teachings that you're being taught. Um, and that's a really key thing. And I think that the problem within learning and when one becomes a student is that they go in so stubborn and not so one-minded that they don't want to change the way they think. They don't want to change the way they feel about things, and they just want to keep their beliefs around the
There's
topic.
like a
Sorry, you can jump in.
hole.
Exactly, definitely. And I think it's just really important to understand that, and that everybody has different beliefs. Everyone has different things that they're thinking about. Everybody has different things they're pondering about, and it's also important to not only accept that, because I can accept it and disrespect you, accept it and also respect it as well, and respect other people's beliefs. It doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with their beliefs. It means that, yeah, okay, this is a free world and you're able to have the belief or the way you think, and that's okay. And I respect that. I respect the way you think, but I don't necessarily agree with it. So it's definitely important to apply the learnings that you're being taught, and listen to the people who are teaching you, because like I said, they're taking time out their day and really really apply what they're teaching you, because at the end of the day they're only trying to help you. We're only trying to help you. Mohammed is only trying to help you. He could literally be playing any game right now, Rocket League, Fortnite, and things like that, right? But he's choosing to help you apply knowledge to yourself. So it's definitely a great question, and I'd leave that off by saying just apply the teachings that are being taught to you.
Yeah, 100%. So today we're talking about learning, and a very important part about learning is using the four skills, listening, writing, speaking, and reading my book. And a lot of the times when we try to learn, people don't know what's the best way to gain information. In your idea, what is the best way to gain information and to learn?
I would say the best way to gain information. Sorry, my cat's he's walking all over me.
Well, then
I would
we'll
say
have you on a separate podcast.
yeah, definitely. I would say the best way to gain information is to, number one, go into it being not like this ignorant person. No kisses right now. You need to go down. Not being this ignorant person, but going into it actually wanting to learn something, and being, like I said, being appreciative and grateful that they're teaching you that. And then I would also say that the best way to learn something is to kind of not forget your beliefs, but listen to what the person teaching you is trying to say, because they could literally be on the opposite spectrum of your beliefs, and they could literally be very different to what the type of people that you hang around. But they could say a line, a phrase, a sentence, a quote that could change your life forever. And that just really goes to show that it doesn't matter who people are. It doesn't matter what they've done. Obviously, if you can be impacted by it, but they can teach you something. And it's important to be open to that, and through the teaching of others, and not to try to judge people so much while they're teaching you. Try to listen to what they're trying to say, understand what they're trying to say, and just have that conversation with them, create that flow. Learning is, I would say it's almost a collaboration between the student and the master. So that would be my answer.
100%. So you gotta learn in a comfortable way. So when you try to learn something, or when you try to prepare for your lessons or for your exams, what's one tip that we could give? Not when necessarily when it comes to school, but when you're trying to learn a new method in life, or when you're trying to learn something, what's something that you do that makes learning easier?
That's a great question. Um, I would just say because I'm the type of person that I obviously do well reading things and learning from that, but I also learn exponentially i- with exponential growth through actual visuals and being able to see things and being
Same
hands-on
here.
with things. And that's why I wanted to be an engineer because I just love, it's great to have that written, you know dialogue of this 3D shape and what it looks like, the dimensions. But I'm the type of person, I want to see this shape, I want to feel it, I want to be able to create it and do something like that. So that's kind of the way I work, and it's just important to respect the way you learn and create a safe space for you to learn. No one can learn really in chaos. Like there's many people that have learned in chaos, but they could have done much better if they were in an environment that was supportive of their learning. So if you can, pick an environment, whether it's I was going to say forest, but it's not exactly safe to just go out into the forest. But I would make it could
Yeah,
even
let's just
be
go study with the frogs.
yeah, just don't listen to that. Don't try this at home. But you could even go into your backyard, sit on the grass, or it could be in your bedroom.
Somewhere
Uh,
calm.
yeah, definitely. But the bathroom popped into the back of my mind, but it's not such a great idea. Someone needs to go. So just try and find that safe place and that educative, learning kind of supportive environment to actually help you learn. And it could even be a group of people. It could be a group of friends, an online community, right? Clubhouse, Instagram, LinkedIn. Once again, if you're on days, you don't use it, and if you do use it, you didn't get that from me. But try and find these safe spaces where you can indulge in and actually love your learning, and you can even learn with other people. You can learn from other people, and yeah, I would say that would be my way of learning.
Tremendous. So, when it comes to learning, a lot of people take in mind the reading of the books, the gaining of information, the listening to public speakers, That's just
Mm.
when you say learning, people always go back to that boring style of table, teacher explaining lesson, and whiteboard in the back. So, in your idea, what do you think? Why do you think so many people are not optimistic about specifically the word learning?
I think it's a great question. I
Mostly
think
teenagers, okay?
Yeah, okay, definitely. I would say because of this, 21st century and being Generation Z and having all this technology, I think learning's become like, uncool. Like it's not cool to learn. Like do your homework. Like even I do not like doing homework, but I know that's gonna help me,
It
right?
was invented, by the way, FYI, it was invented as punishment.
I guess you could say that. But I think because
Google it.
this kind of the stereotypical type of learning, whereas it's boring. You sit down in classes for hours and hours, and you look out the window, and you're daydreaming. Um, and I would just answer to that and say, not every type of teaching is like that way. Just because your teacher might be boring does not mean every teacher is boring, right? There's so many teachers out there who will teach you through stories, through actual events, through fun things. You can even learn things through games, right? You can learn so much through games. And I'm not saying this is an excuse to ask your mom to play another 8 hours, but you can learn things through games, right? And
100%, yeah. Someone's gonna pull up to their mom and be like, Mom, did you know that I can learn physics from games? Like this game right here, it's about Spider-Man, but at the velocity I shoot my webs and the speed that I'm going and the trajectory of my falling, I'm gonna get to that place. And I calculate
yeah,
that in my brain.
definitely. Well, don't do that. We don't do that. But you can learn so much from learning, and learning has been like downgraded for because it's seen as this boring thing. But if you can learn things in a fun way, right? And I think also I'm going to contradict myself again by saying not everything has to be fun, and it gets to that point where kids and teenagers, obviously if you're a kid, have fun all day, you use fun to the extent. But if you're like a teenager, not everything has to be fun. And it's important to understand that. Because if you go into life thinking everything has to be fun, the moment you step into a classroom and your teacher tells you x squared times x squared or x squared times 2, and you want it to be this fun way, you're going to be
Ultimate
confused.
subject, maths.
Exactly. So not everything has to be fun, and it's important to understand that. And as you're growing up, you will definitely understand that. Trust me, I've heard this from my siblings, from my mom, and that not everything is fun. My mom, like, I'll give you a little insider. My mom done computer science, yeah. So that was, my mom found it great, but obviously not everything within that subject was fun. Looking at zeros and ones all day, is that fun? I don't know. I possibly couldn't tell
When
you.
it's out of context, of course not. But for me as a fellow programmer, yeah, that may seem fun.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's why I go back to saying before around, everybody has different ways of fun and everyone has different ways of learning. So it's important to understand how you learn and have that, learning stimulated environment to help you learn. And learning isn't boring. Learning is boring when you don't learn anything, right? So when you're in a classroom, you don't learn anything, but you're not learning anything, not because the teacher's boring or he doesn't explain things well. It's because you're not listening. You're hearing, but you're not listening. And it's important to listen when someone is teaching you something.
100%. So yeah, listening, learning, speaking, reading, writing, these are all fundamentals of the gain of knowledge. But most people are going to now be thinking, you know what? Since I don't have any other questions, why should I gain knowledge? What's the importance of information? So in my idea, because information is literally everything. Me speaking to you, you guys looking at the screen right now, the editing, not gonna be a lot of it, but most of the things that we see in our life is information. The ideas in our head is information. Let me break down what information is. So you've got information has meaning, meaning of which is made out of sentences made out of words made out of letters that come into a specific order into our brain that give us meaning. So that's basically how meaning works and how information works. And so in my idea, information is everything, because with information, we've built upon many generations, many societies, many people, many communities, a lot of things information has built, and it can tear down as well. So why do you think information is so important?
I think information is important because if you don't believe in the power of knowledge, then as soon as you enter into a room with people filled with knowledge, you're not able to, number one, relate to them. And communication, that's like literally the fundamental key to being human, right? Being able to communicate with people. Even deaf people, right? They love we love communicating so much that deaf people went to the extent of making their own language, right? So communication is very, very key. It's very fundamental. So if you go into a room without any knowledge or any learning or any, knowing of the subject, and there's people around you who do, you're not able to, communicate with them, and you're not able to relate to them or what they're sharing or what's being shared. And the moment that happens, you go in and say that's boring, or they're talking about boring stuff. Is it boring, or did you not do your homework? Right? So it's important to understand the difference between learning, not listening, also being ignorant. My mom told me that being ignorant, some people perceive it as like this rude word, but being ignorant means ignoring, ignoring. So you're ignoring what people are saying, but it also means lack of knowledge. So when you're ignorant, it means you're ignoring what the people are trying to teach you stuff, but it also means that you're lacking the knowledge that the people have that who are around you, and you don't want to be like that, right? So you want to be open to learning. You want to be some kind person, not ignorant or arrogant. And those are the two main, deal breakers within, no matter what you're going to do. If you definitely you could go into engineering, being a football player or being a coach and manager, no matter what you want to do, there's always some part of having knowledge in there, and it's important to understand that as well as taking in knowledge. But on the topic of having knowledge and learning, it's important to learn things. And it's important to have this information in the back of your mind, right? And people might say you don't use information, maths. When do you use maths? How do you think a footballer, taking it so, how do you think a footballer, so when, let's say, the ball bounces on the floor just before the footballer gets a time to shoot into net, how do you think he calculates which place on the ball to kick, which at what power he needs to kick it, and at what type of spin he needs to kick it at to get into goal? How do you think he does that? It's all psychological and unconscious, and you don't think about it, but that's what's really happening. Your brain thinks. You think on how to kick that ball into the net. And I'm sure, Mohammed, you know what I'm talking about. Unless you don't score goals in football, that is.
Ah,
But
you just roasted me low key. Why do you have to do me like that?
well, I'm just kidding. But so you do know about it, which means you're a good footballer. But any person who's into sports would know this. How do you think a 6 foot guy calculates how many times he needs to dribble, how many skills he needs to do, and then he goes and jumps 3 foot in the air to dunk it in a hoop? How do you think he does that? It's not it's not something that should just come into his spirit.
You can't just
It's not
pause
like
the game and go.
exactly. It's not like the Jordan Shoes movie that gives you superpowers. It's because they have the knowledge, and it's important to understand that. And throughout your life, you're going to find instances where the things that you said you probably never use, you start using them. It might not be you using it to your benefit, but it might be you teaching someone as well. You could teach a kid how to do maths, right? And you could have said that, this is boring. But you just done a disservice to that kid because you could have grown that kid's knowledge. You could have helped him go somewhere. But because you were too selfish not to gain any knowledge, you become ignorant. You become arrogant. And we don't want that.
Of course, 100%. And it's all going back to someone else because the knowledge that we're going to have, we're going to apply it to our life. And that's going to help other people. We're going to give and put it out there, and that's going to help other people. Like the books that you publish, like everyone, whatever they're reading, the articles, all that's just information being pushed out. It's just being overflown. And the thing is, the difference between generations is between the 1900s, like 1950 to 2000, 1 terabyte of data, right, was created. Now, 1 terabyte of data in the 21st century is created every single day thanks to the internet. And 1 terabyte, my God, that's too much data, right? Like 65% of it may be false, true, but that's a lot of knowledge. So that's not only a lot of knowledge, it's just like so much data and information because data is correct and dignified information. That's what it means. And in my idea, the fact that there's a lot of it out there, and the more you learn, the less you know. That's the most psychological, best quote I've ever heard about learning because every time you learn, every time you realize, I didn't know this, and I didn't know this, and I didn't know this. I do, but I didn't. So, yeah, Paolo, I can't thank you enough for today's episode. Do you have one last word for the people that are watching?
Definitely. And I think this, what I'm about to share applies to learning and teaching. Um, but there's this man I know. His name is John Hammond. And I'm writing a book with him, and we're in the process of finalizing, publishing it and
Exclusive
getting it
on
out there.
Mohamed Talks.
Thank you. But the book we're working on is about leadership, and what he really talks about in there is humility and being a humble person and being a good person and respecting other people's beliefs. And what he shares in this book is really, really important. And what he shared with me is really important as well. Is that in order to become a great leader, you really have to be, and this is like kind of my take on what he's shared, is that you really have to be selfless. And one of the things that he says is that leadership is never about you. It's never about you, the leader. It's always about the people. So when you're learning, you can look at this from a student's perspective, or if you're a teacher, you can look at this from a teacher's perspective. But leadership is never about you, and this goes into learning as well. Because in order to become a good leader, sorry, you have to become a great follower. And I think that's something that you can take away with you, and something that you can ponder on and think about what that means to you. But it can apply to your learning. In order to be a good learner, in order to be a good teacher, you have to be a great learner. This can apply to everything. So kind of look at your take on it and see what that means to you.
Yep, 100%. Thank you everyone for joining us today on today's episode. Hope you're having an amazing day. Be sure to go on to YouTube and check the links in the description for Paolo Ben Salmi, my brother from another mother's social media links and everything else. Hope you're having an amazing day. This is Mohamed Talks with Paolo Ben Salmi, a fellow motivational speaker and author. Hope you're having an amazing day, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye!